Greetings all. We will be starting the webinar in a couple of minutes. All right, greetings. I hope everyone is doing well today. My name is Chris Walker, Senior Program Analyst with the National Environmental Health Association. I would like to welcome you to EPA's presentation on WSMART, Wildfire Smoke Air Monitoring and Response Technology Program, providing supplemental air quality monitoring technology during wildfires. I am pleased to introduce you to Bailey Stearns. Bailey is a science communication and engagement professional at EPA. Bailey, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for joining everyone. I will be introducing our speakers today, Amara and Pete. Dr. Amara Holder is a research mechanical engineer with US EPA's Office of Research and Development. She received her PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of California, Berkeley, and has been a researcher with EPA since 2011. Her research focuses broadly on the particulate matter emitted from combustion sources and their impacts on human health and the environment, with a special focus on smoke and wildland fires. She's been active in developing and evaluating particulate matter sensors for wildfire smoke monitoring and applying these technologies to better understand how wildfire smoke impacts both outdoor and indoor air quality. She's been a part of the EPA team researching the factors that impact smoke infiltration and what actions can be taken to reduce smoke exposure indoors. She's contributed to multiple scientific assessments on wildfire smoke and served as a member of the National Academy's Committee on the Chemistry of Urban Wildfires. Our other speaker today is Pete Lom. Pete Lom is the Air Resource Specialist for the USDA Forest Service, State and Private Forestry, Fire and Aviation Management in Washington, D.C. He leads the Interagency Wildland Fire Air Quality Response Program, which provides personnel, technical specialists called Air Resource Advisors, smoke modeling and monitoring capabilities to develop forecasts for areas adversely affected by smoke. Starting in 2004, Pete has led the Forest Service national smoke management efforts, developing technical approaches and policies related to smoke impacts from prescribed fire and wildfires. Since 2006, he has chaired the National Wildfire Coordinating Group Smoke Committee. Please welcome our speakers, and go ahead, Amara, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Bailey. Thanks for having me here today to talk with you all. So I am going to get us started, and I'll transition to Pete, and he'll cover his topics, and then we'll go back to me, and I'll cover more of my topics. So just for a little bit of background material before we get into this, I just wanted to mention the growing challenge of wildfire smoke that we face in the United States. And this plot here shows some of the statistics, but it gives you a nice visual of how the average annual burned acreage has increased pretty dramatically over the past 2 decades. And with this increase of wildfires across the landscape, we see a big increase in wildfire smoke, and it's a major public health issue that's impacting many parts of the United States. Now, during a smoke event, what we see, this is a graphic from NPR from their website. It shows that the concentrations of PM 2.5 increase quite dramatically at times near these fires. That is the major driver of the overall air quality index, or the AQI. Now, these high PM 2.5 concentrations are a major public health concern during these times. They're also a good indicator of the wildfire smoke severity. So it's really important to understand what those concentrations are near fires. Now, it's not just PM 2.5 in smoke that's important. There's also gases as well as some hazardous air pollutants, but particulate matter is really the big one. And this is a graphic that EPA has developed showing you the different sizes of particulate matter. And for wildfire smoke, we're really concerned about these very tiny particles, these pink ones or red ones in the smallest graphic there. In addition to PM, we're interested in carbon monoxide. Those can be emitted from fires, volatile organic carbon compounds or VOCs. Ozone can be generated downwind. And then the hazardous air pollutants, we look at gases like formaldehyde or particle phase compounds like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These all have implications for human health. Now, during a wildfire smoke event, you want to know what the concentrations are of all of those compounds, and there's many challenges involved in trying to monitor for those species. Smoke plumes have high spatial variability, especially near the fire, and oftentimes these fires are burning in mountainous terrain, and so you can have these interesting terrain-driven shifts in the plume as you have upslope winds or downslope winds that change over the course of a day. And oftentimes the nearest official monitor can be very far from the impacted region and really not be representative of the smoke exposure near the fire. Also, these monitors are not in the indoor environment where most people spend their days. And so it's important to understand what concentrations are indoor as well. So in general, having more measurements near fires is a real big value added in understanding the impacts of wildfire smoke. Now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Pete to talk about his program.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity today to partner up with EPA in this presentation on WSMART, a very important element as you'll learn through this presentation today. One of the places where it has been incredibly valuable is in the Interagency Wildland Fire Air Quality Response Program that I have the pleasure of leading for many agencies at this point. So we'll give you a little bit of background on some of the impacts that are happening right now, and then what we're trying to do about that. Next slide. So how much smoke? One of the tools for tracking the concentration and actually the contribution of different sources of fine particulate matter, we are focusing on PM2.5 here, is the National Emissions Inventory pulled together by EPA every 3 years. And wildfire comprises about 10.3 million acres of land in that year, and also prescribed fire, which is also another source of smoke, although at much lesser magnitude than wildfire. Satellite information, very important in the acquisition of all of these acres. And then in terms of concentration,
Excuse me, Pete.
Fire, yes?
Your microphone is cutting in and out. I don't know if you're close to your microphone, if you can get any closer.
I'll get closer. In fact, I'll pull the camera off just to make sure that we're not running into any bandwidth issues. How's that? Anything better?
Okay, I think it may be better with the video being off. So let's try that again. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All righty. So I'll start with EPA does a national emission inventory every 3 years, and the last one that is in a draft form right now is for 2020. Wildfire at approximately 10.3 million acres, and this was somewhat represented in the data that Amra showed, but also prescribed fire, which does have smoke impact, although at a to a lesser degree. Satellite information is a key element. Are we transmitting fine now? Bailey?
Pete, there's something when you start talking, it seems to distort the volume or the voice where it kind of goes to a lower piece. Would it be possible? Is it possible to switch to phone audio?
Yeah, that is going to take a second, or I'm going to switch mics. If you give me 2 seconds, I can grab an external mic and phone, but it's going to take me about 30 seconds.
Okay.
That's probably a better solution. Stand by.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Pete.
pull it up.
And we do apologize for the technical difficulties. If you give us a second, we'll try to.
If you have a number, I'm going to use the number because I'm not finding this mic easily. I thought I knew where it was. If you've got a number, does anyone have a number?
If you are in the Zoom client, Pete, and you click the little
Yeah,
up
Tommy.
arrow next to the mute, there is a switch to phone audio button that you can click. Once you click that, it should give you a phone number that you can use to dial in, as well as a meeting ID and a participant ID. Are you seeing that?
I'm there. Thanks. That's the fastest way to do it. Perfect.
Thank
I'm
you.
dialing. Didn't have this problem on the front end.
Followed by pound.
And I see someone with their hand up, Tiffany. And if you have a comment, you can probably put that into the Q&A piece.
How about now?
Sounds better. I think there's a
We are
potential
getting a bit of an echo.
I'm getting it sorted as fast as I can.
Thank you.
Okay, how about now?
You might need to mute your computer audio. It sounds like maybe your phone is picking up from the speakers.
Already muted.
How
How about now?
Your voice is coming in clearly. We are just getting a little bit of echo, but that might just be the state of things today, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know what's triggering that. Hang on. This is weird. Okay, Gail is saying she's not getting an echo.
Okay, Pete, I mean, you can go ahead and resume your presentation and then we'll kind of let you know if something's happening.
All righty. So one of the key messages that I wanted to convey here is that for fine particulate matter in the US in 2020, 42% of it was from wildland fire. And so that is a significant portion of PM2.5 in the US. And the impacts from wildfire in specific, which is our real focus today, is well reflected on the slide, which is one of the information that is collected by the Wildland Fire Air Quality Response Program. Amber, if you could pass the slide on. There we go. And so this key issue of information here that's being reflected is that a lot of other sources are declining over time through some successful application of the Clean Air Act and the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. However, the contribution from wildfire, as was pointed out in Amber's slide as well, is tending to increase. There is variability from year to year, and I'll point that out in my next slide. So in 2020 and 2021, everyone hopefully is familiar with the air quality index and the various cut points ranging from the lowest levels, which is a very healthy place to be breathing, and certainly where we want to be, and then downwind of wildfires, as is reflected in a number of monitored and temporary monitoring here, the regulatory monitors and temporary monitors combined together, showing the impact for a couple of key years in terms of the air quality index values that were acquired, that were hit, and for how long some of that occurs. In 2020 was a very, very severe year. As you remember, a lot of people on the West Coast exposed to very high levels in September, massive fire growth, massive consumption of homes, private property, as well as public lands, and the devastation around that. And some very, very intense smoke impacts on the public for fairly significant lengths of duration, as you can see here. 2021 was a little bit of a lighter year, but the distribution of impacts was for a broader period. Next slide, please. And then more recently, 2022 was a little bit lighter wildfire year, but we still are seeing substantial hazardous levels being measured out there. And that is the smoke levels that are being breathed in by folks outside in the public, as well as certainly our firefighters as well. This plot that has some circles on the lower part is an important element also, because it shows the duration at some of these elevated levels above the AQI of unhealthy for sensitive groups and above. The larger circle is the duration of some of that exposure. And as you can see, a good portion of the West certainly spending substantial time periods above unhealthy for sensitive groups and above that level, including unhealthy, very unhealthy, and hazardous levels. Next slide. So that's where we come in. The Interagency Wildfire Air Quality Response Program was authorized by Congress and approved under the John Dingell Act in 2019. We've been addressing smoke from wildfire, actually kind of initiating in 2011 and our first training class in 2013. And that was to develop specific positions that fit on the incident management teams that respond to large catastrophic wildfires. And these folks are called Air Resource Advisors. They're dispatched as part of those teams and integrate into the effort, as you can see here in the one graphic, which shows how we intersect with different positions within the incident management team, from the public information officer, which is how information is transmitted to the public, to the internal workings of the organization of wildfire, with the forecasting of fire behavior, meteorology, and all the other elements that are important under the paradigm of responding to wildfire. We bring a number of tools to the table. Our Air Resource Advisors are trained in smoke modeling, not only the Pacific Northwest Experiment Research Station's Blue Sky model, but many other models, including those from National Weather Service and other partners. There's an emergency monitoring cache we maintain, and that has deployable about 50 fine particulate matter monitors. They operate and they do transmit out and publicly available information. We're also concerned about carbon monoxide. So we have a number of ways of measuring carbon monoxide and even carboxyhemoglobin levels in blood for our fire personnel. Some of these units over the years have been contributions from EPA, Fish and Wildlife Service, and others, and helps augment the initial investments from the U.S. Forest Service into this line of work. I should point out that a lot of these monitors are also utilized when we conduct the tribe fires. This monitoring information, obviously, it's one thing to deploy a monitor and start collecting information and transmitting that to the various systems that are out there, including EPA's monitoring systems, but also how to interpret that information. And so we've developed tools to allow this information to be drawn effectively into our smoke forecasts and validation of some of our forecasting for our models that we provide. Again, messaging is another key element. I mentioned the public information officers, but there's a variety of ways to get messages out on the air quality that is going to be possible downwind of these large wildfires. We use something called Smoke Outlook, which is the graphic with some of the colors in the middle of this page, which is a consistent output that can be accessed on the EPA Forest Service fire and smoke map, which I'll talk about in a moment. But if it covers an area downwind of the fire, the public is able to access this quite seamlessly through that map, as well as being distributed by the public information officers on the fire and through their trap lines and at the public community meetings that are frequently held as the wildfires progress in an area. And without coordination, this would be quite unsuccessful. Concerns about smoke impacts are shared by state, tribal, and local agencies and entities such as air quality regulatory communities and the public health department, as well as just the public at large. And so coordination of these messages is taken before these are issued, typically these smoke outlooks, to ensure that we're all on the same page and we're getting the public consistent message. It's really about the idea of reducing smoke exposure through behavior modification, getting the messages out there. What can you do to reduce your exposure for both the public as well as our personnel when it's possible? Another issue that we address is smoke on roads, because unfortunately there have been some fatal accidents with smoke on roads and people hitting that at high speeds and being virtually blind in the smoke. And so this is another factor and another challenge that we take on. So then this exposure, and I apologize for the background noise, such as doing it at the house. These smoke outlooks have covered some pretty broad swaths over these time periods, as noted here. So I should mention that air resource advisors are a community of many different entities supporting this effort. So behind the Forest Service being the most common ARA, Air Resource Advisor, EPA comes second. So if you could go to the next slide, that would be helpful, Amber. So let's talk about the Air Resource Advisors a little bit more. So I mentioned that they're trained to look at smoke conditions, assess monitoring data, run models to help forecast the smoke levels to allow people to be get information that will allow them to live with the smoke, know when they might be able to open the windows or close them to reduce their exposure, and perhaps even time when they might want to work out if they're outside. Again, all of that, if you're working out in clean air, your exposure is low. If you're thinking about working out in high smoke conditions, it will be not so healthy. So it's really about determining the risk, the potential exposures, and then what might be possible in terms of mitigation. And that's through the range of public health, firefighter exposure, and also roadway safety. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, we've been deploying ARA since 2013. You can see we've been all over the West, in the East, up in Alaska, and we will be continuing to do that. And some of our prescribed fires have even utilized the ARA cadre. So we are a group of many different agencies, as I mentioned. Forest Service is quite common. We have some retirees from some of the various state and federal agencies with experience in this line of work. And then EPA and some of our Department of Interior agencies and bureaus are also providing air resource advisors when needed and be deployed on these incident management teams. So next slide. So this is a quick map of some coverage of some of these smoke outlooks over time. And we have been working very strenuously the last several years to make sure that our smoke outlooks are both in English and in Spanish. And without the support of our research branch, this would be a real challenge. So we've also been modifying and enhancing smoke dispersion tools to give us longer outlooks. And that also, I think, makes a difference in how the public responds. But one of the challenges is how do we get this information out there? Next slide. And so that tool is the fire and smoke map, which has been jointly produced with EPA and the Forest Service under the Air Now umbrella. This encompasses the monitors from the regulatory side to the temporary monitors, and then also air sensors. We translated that this summer into a full Spanish map. And we also utilize some of the HMS information for hazard mapping system showing some of the smoke impacts at upper levels, and also some links to the information about the fire, which can be garnered by clicking on the actual flame. This has been an awesome tool because we've integrated the smoke outlooks information into this tool to get it right in the hands of the public when they realize they're being impacted by smoke. So this is a great opportunity, but it points out the absolute critical need of the tools that Amara is going to talk about in a moment. And that is the WSMART process and those tools, because you don't have a monitor everywhere. And truthfully, understanding the dynamics of smoke movement, which Amara alluded to earlier, is absolutely critical to understanding how well our models are working and how well this forecast is going to be for the public. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over back to Amara, and she will continue with the key elements of the WSMART program.
Thanks, Pete. So I'll just go into a little bit of an overview of what EPA has been doing to address this huge challenge of wildfire smoke that Pete laid out for us. We've been working in several different areas of research and development. We've been looking at studying the source emissions from these fires and how they impact health and ecosystems. We've been trying to develop methods to improve our modeling, to improve our monitoring and our data visualization from these fires, as Pete alluded to some of the tools. And then most importantly, working on our risk communication. So I have a number of different icons and pictures down below showing the different projects and how we've tried to address different challenges that we see with the wildfire smoke arena. And there I have to call out one of our EPA ARAs, John, and the picture there on his deployment in 2021. So just showing how EPA is trying to address all of these different challenges with wildfire smoke. Now, today's focus is really going to be on one particular aspect of our research portfolio, which is in our title, the WSMART pilot. Now, this pilot was started in 2021, and it was in response to a meeting between President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris with the Western Governors Association. And they were talking specifically about the impacts of wildfire on these states and what was going to be done. And the administration put forth a three-pronged effort, and one of these prongs was to use new technology to identify dangerous smoke and air pollution. And that's where we stepped in to try and fill that gap. And we've continued, we started the project in 2021, and we continue that project with the support of EPA's Air, Climate, and Energy Research Program. Now, the WSMART program is essentially a sensor loan program. What we have done is put together some promising technologies for monitoring different aspects of wildfire smoke, whether it be stationary sensors measuring just the fine particulate matter or PM 2.5, or multi-pollutant sensor packages that measure different pollutants like carbon monoxide, PM 2.5, and organic compounds. And then we also have a mobile monitoring system. And I'm going to go into detail describing each of these in the next few slides. But we provide all of these different monitoring packages for loan through our program. Now, we partnered with the EPA regions and our Office of Air and Radiation to create this loan program for state, local, and tribal air organizations. So this could be an environmental department for the state, or a public health agency, a local public health agency, just people who are familiar with air quality impacts and are able to operate these instruments. We have a dedicated webpage where these requests go through. We will talk a little bit more about how that happens. And then we also have our partnership with Pete's group, where we provide all of these tools for his air resource advisors as they get deployed. And this is partly done through the U.S. Forest Service Rocky Mountain Cache and partly done through us at EPA. And we try and get these tools out to the people that need them as quickly as we can. Now, for state, local, and tribal air agencies, we have our webpage that provides a bit of a description of the program. And then if you click on the link, it'll bring you to a form. And this form is where you can fill out your information about who you are, what agency you represent, and what your need is. After that form gets submitted to us, we do some triage by reaching out to you directly. We talk to you about your problems, what your needs are, and we talk about what we think might be the best mix of technology to help you respond to your wildfire smoke issues. Once we've decided what's going to be the best suite of instrumentation for you, we send out the equipment. We try to send that out as quickly as possible because we realize how dynamic wildfire smoke events are. So usually you'll get that within the next 1 or 2 days. We then do some virtual training sessions are available. We also have a variety of other training materials to help you get up and running as quickly as possible. And then it's up to you as a state air quality or state, local, tribal air quality agency to set up the supplemental monitoring and start using that data in your communities. So I'm going to go through each of the different technologies and talk about what they measure and what they'd be good for using, what they'd be used for, and how they might display the data. So the first one is our stationary PM2.5 measurement. We opted to use a Purple Air. It's a very low cost system. Many people have these for personal use. As you can see, they're fed into the fire and smoke map that Pete highlighted earlier. It measures PM2.5 via sensor. It measures continuously at a 2-minute time resolution. After it's installed at a location and registered, if that data is made publicly available, it will automatically feed into the AirNow fire and smoke map. And for this loan program, this equipment, because it's low cost, it's somewhat of a consumable because they don't have an infinite lifespan. They will die after some period of time. We consider it a permanent loan, so to speak. So once it's sent out to you, you can keep it and continue to run it until it no longer works. And what we suggest for these sensors is to be used in places where you have some clear data gaps, but you have some infrastructure to support the setup of a Purple Air. So the Purple Air needs power and it needs Wi-Fi. So it's nice to have like a community building that you have that infrastructure already set up. It's also good at community buildings because that's where there's generally a lot of interest in having a public display. Oftentimes, like a place like a library would not have local emissions. And so it's a good representation of what the air quality is within the community. Our other technology that's stationary is our multi-pollutant monitoring options. So right now we're offering 2 different systems. One is a system that's manufactured by Thingy AQ, and then we're bringing on a new system that's called the Canary X that's manufactured by Outpost Environmental. Both of these packages measure PM2.5, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and total volatile organic compounds via sensors continuously, and they're both at a 1-minute resolution. Both of these systems have data telemetry, so you can set them up somewhere and then have them report back the data. They need a cellular communication to have this work, so you can't go entirely remote. You do need to have cell service, but we do offer these systems with solar power. So they have solar panels and batteries so that they can operate continuously without being plugged in. Right now, both systems provide data on a private access data platform. I've got a screenshot of the Thingy AQ data platform there, and you're seeing some emissions at a location near a fire. You can see a daily trend where the smoke increases and then drops off. And you can see similarly, the CO also increases along with the PM. So we're suggesting these types of sensors be used in places where both PM2.5 and carbon monoxide are a potential exposure issue. So, and in areas where you may have limited infrastructure to support the installation of a Purple Air. Now, these types of multi-pollutant packages are for a limited lifetime loan. We like to loan them out only for the duration of the smoke event, and then we ask for them to be sent back to us so that they can be used by others who are smoke impacted. And finally, we have our mobile monitoring system. So this is called the Vehicle Add-on Mobile Monitoring System, or we call it VAMS. This is something that was built custom by EPA in our electronics shop and our machine shop. By our technicians, designed by us to try and fill a data need that we saw within smoke monitoring. So what it has is it's a suitcase-sized package. You're seeing a picture of one here in this yellow case. It's got a blue scientific research-grade monitor that measures PM2.5. And the data output from that is integrated into a system with a GPS and some meteorological information. So we'll get relative humidity, temperature, latitude, longitude, elevation, and this is all done at a 1-second time resolution. The data is combined into a single data file on a data logger that's on board the system. Everything's saved onto an SD card for now. That SD card data can be transferred to a computer and uploaded into an EPA-designed web app called ReadyGo. And ReadyGo does some automatic mapping. So This is meant to be a sort of turnkey solution. You can get this mobile monitor, put it in your car, it runs on a battery power, or if you run out of battery after 8 hours of use, you can plug it into your car power adapter for an extended lifetime. Once you do your mobile measurements, you can come back to wherever your base station is, load this data up onto the app and do some automatic mapping of the data, as well as looking at some time series. And I'll show an example here in just a minute or two. We're suggesting that the mobile monitor be used in places that are impacted by really diverse smoke concentrations. So this is your mountainous areas. These are areas where you might have multiple locations where people might be impacted, but there's really minimal or no infrastructure. So an example of one of these uses would be in mountainous terrain where you might have some hiking areas or other outdoor activities that the public might want to use, but there's really no infrastructure. So you could take this system, you could drive by, get a snapshot of the air quality in some of these locations and get more information about what the current conditions are on the ground there. So as part of our program, we provide not just the equipment, but also a full range of user support. So we do quality assurance and quality control at our laboratory facilities. We do a first check on everything that comes into our program, make sure that it's working before we send it out. And then once it's out and over into your hands, we provide a variety of different user guides. So this is a snapshot of one of our quick start guides. It's the size of really large note card. It's on cardboard, so it's meant to be really quickly and easily understood. We show some visuals of how you would get your system set up. We put in some steps to follow. And it's something that's meant to get you up and running within the matter of a few minutes. We also have some longer print documents to help you go into more depth, let's say if you need to do some troubleshooting. And then we do some remote coaching. So thank goodness we now live in this virtual world. So once we send out this equipment, we can get on a video call with you and we can walk you through all of the procedures through the video and help you in real time nearly to get up to speed. And so this is an example of a screenshot here of our ReadyGo app, and we're showing our loan recipient on how to use the app and what kind of information you can gain from the SD card coming off of the VAMS unit. So we've been doing this now for 2 years. 2021, I would say doesn't count because we were really just getting our feet wet, getting the equipment together. 2022 was our first complete year of doing these loans. We had 29 total loan recipients that used our equipment. 14 of those were air resource advisors who used mostly the VAMS and a subset using the Thingy AQ multi-pollutant system. They worked at a variety of fires across the Western United States. So there's the Moose Fire, Mosquito Fire, Cedar Creek Fire, White Rivers Fire, Six Rivers Fire, Red and Rogers Fire, McKinney Fire, Rum Creek Fire, all major incidences across the United States, mostly on that western side. 12 of our loan recipients were also tribal organizations. Most, I believe all of those requested purple air sensor units, and all of them have held on to their purple air units. Many of them are still up and running and providing air quality information in their communities. We had 3 loan recipients who were state and local organizations, and they had varying equipment requests and varying equipment uses. You can see that most of our loans were made in the Western United States where wildfire smoke impacts are the largest. We had some in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California, North Dakota, Colorado. So I'm going to go through just a few case studies here to show you some examples of how these requests came in and what sort of uses these loan recipients use their equipment on. So this was a request from the Falam Paiute Shoshone tribe in California. So Sonia Corlito was our contact there. And when she got in touch with us, she described how the reservation is split up into 2 different parts. So they have a colony and a reservation. And the purple air sensors were going to be placed in both parts of that community, as well as the plan of putting them indoors. So she noted that their community had many swamp coolers. So these swamp coolers just bring in large amounts of outside air. They're active in the summer months when wildfire smoke is at its worst. And so they wanted to get a better understanding of what indoor air quality impacts were in some of these swamp cooler run homes. Currently, they had no information for PM10 or PM2.5 on their reservation. They had monitors for ozone, but not for smoke. And so they really had no information from anything local other than what they could see with their own eyes. And so she shared with us a number of pictures of how they set up their sensors. They use their sensors to start a flag program. So you can see the picture of the flag there. It looks like it's a red flag on that day, and the visibility is pretty low to support that. They were not able to use these sensors indoors due to some confounding indoor sources, which was just another indication of the indoor environment often being dirtier than the outdoor environment. Another case study that we had was with the Tetlin Tribal Council. So they're in Alaska in a very remote location where their village is situated at. So they were over 200 miles from the nearest regulatory monitor. So really a situation where they have no local information on air quality. And it is a location that is often impacted by fires. So this was a screenshot from the fire and smoke map showing a number of fires burning across Alaska and causing some serious air quality impacts downwind from them. And the blue arrow points out the sensors in the Tetlin tribe. And so we were able to help them get some air quality monitoring that's local to where they were at and get some information out to their communities. I think that was a great success. Another example is how we loaned equipment to an air resource advisor who was working the Red and Rogers fire. This took place in Yosemite National Park in August. These were fires that were smaller. They're called a type 3 incident. So they're smaller, they're less managed, and they're more allowed to spread. So the smoke from these fires can be much more localized because they're so small. And then it's burning in an area where you have this really interesting topography. So in Yosemite, if you've ever visited there, you know that the valley is not only stunning to look at, but there's a huge vertical variation between different parts of the valley. And you can, if you're working in this valley, you can be exposed to different concentrations. So this air resource advisor was in a really challenging scenario to try and generate a smoke forecast that would cover all parts of the valley where people would be at. What he did was he used the VAMs and the persistent weather forecast to try and inform his smoke outlooks for the next day. So he was able to drive into the valley, monitor where the smoke was at, and then look at different times during the day to see if the inversion was lifting and the smoke concentrations were lowering. And once he had his outlook formed, he could then take the VAMs back the next day and confirm or have some more information to tweak his outlook for the next day if there was persistent weather condition. He was able to present this data to the national park staff and give them a better indication of where park staff could work and have better air quality and at what times of the day they'd want to prioritize work in those locations so they would have minimized their smoke exposure. We had another ARA case study at the Cedar Creek Fire. This was in Southern Oregon. So this was a really large fire and is having some really extreme smoke impacts in some of valleys there. So there's some dense smoke pockets, and there's a concern about high concentrations of PM 2.5 and carbon monoxide, especially at where they had the incident command set up. So you see some pictures of these yurts here where lots of people working the fire are living. This would be a place where they would try and get a reduction in smoke exposure when they're not actively working the fire. But as you can see in that picture there, the visibility is quite poor, and so the concentrations are pretty high. So we were able to add this supplemental monitor within the incident command area and get some idea on what their concentrations were. We saw that the carbon monoxide levels were rising during these periods of dense smoke, but thankfully that they were remaining below any of the health and safety thresholds. So that was critical information to better understand what these emergency responders were being exposed to at this location. So with that, I'll just wrap up with a couple of next steps for our program. We're continuing this program into the 2023 fire season. We are continuing to do some testing partner loans with state, local, and tribal air agencies during these off times when there's low wildfire activity throughout the United States. This gives us a great opportunity to help support people who are impacted by wildfire smoke, state, local, tribal agencies who want to get a feel for how the equipment works before there's an actual wildfire event in their community. And it also gives us great feedback because these people can give us some information about how it works for them, what things were hard to deal with, what things they'd like to have changed, and that can help us improve our program. We continue to do more research and development on our technology. We're improving our monitoring systems specifically based off of our loan recipient and these training-based partner loans feedback. So when people give us feedback, we try to incorporate it into our programs. We're using that feedback to improve our connections to the EPA air quality apps. So trying to incorporate more of the sensor data into the Air Now Fire and Smoke map, improve our ReadyGo data visualization platform so it better meets our users' needs. We've also been working on new technology. So we've taken our mobile monitoring system, the VAMS, and extended it. So we're calling it a VAMS X, and added on a measurement for carbon monoxide and for black carbon. This helps us identify the differences between wildfire smoke and diesel exhaust, because that's a common issue when you're on the road. So it gives us a better idea of what sources we're being impacted while we're doing this mobile monitoring. We're also taking any of the data that's being collected by our loan recipients. We're doing some quality control on that, and we're hoping to make this public as soon as possible so that other researchers can use this to improve their system. So it's something that we can feed into smoke models and help provide some feedback on how the model is performing. And then finally, we're working on a publication for a journal article describing our VAMS technology and how it can be used, some of the limitations of our use. So with that, I'll just have a high-level summary of what we presented today. Smoke from wildfires is a major public health concern that's not going away. There's high spatial and temporal variability of wildfire smoke plumes. It makes it very challenging to collect representative air quality information. And Pete's team is doing their best with the technology they have to get out there and spread the word within the communities that are being impacted. So the WSMART loan program is seen as an extension of Pete's program to try and advance the development of mobile and lower cost multi-pollutant monitoring technologies to try and improve their toolkit for getting out there and improving our understanding of wildfire smoke. And so far, it's been showing to provide some really valuable air quality information in some of these communities that are impacted by wildfire smoke. So before I end, I would just like to acknowledge the many people who have worked on this project. There's many people within EPA, there's many people within the Forest Service, and of course, we can't thank our loan recipients more. They have been an active partner in this. They are the boots on the ground actually going out and taking these measurements. So it's really critical that we have their involvement, and they've been such a critical part of this. So thank you for your attention today. And here's our contact information. I believe we're happy to answer all your questions.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Dr. Amara Holder. Thank you very much, Peter Lam, for the presentation. It was very excellent. A lot of great information. Seeing you still have the opportunity to put questions out, but I do have a question that I would like to ask. I know when it comes, I think you talked about virtual coaching. If you can go into detail, what would that the training sessions, what would that consist of? Is there a certain number, how long, and what are you talking about in those sessions?
So we've been focusing the virtual sessions on the VAMS use because it's a little bit more foreign to many people who haven't done mobile monitoring. The purple air is kind of self-explanatory, and we talk you through that on the phone if need be. But the VAMS, we like to get in personal and have a 30-minute call. This is where we can go over the hardware if there are questions above and beyond what our quick start guide provided. But really, it's about taking the data, showing you how to get it into the ReadyGo app, showing how to display it and change some of the features on ReadyGo to get a display that you want, and then talking about how to take that information and turn it into something that you might want to share with your community. So it's about messaging. So taking the data, analyzing the data, and converting it into a message that you can provide to the public that's meaningful. And so that's what we focus on. And we normally will reach out once we send the equipment and say, hey, we're offering this 30-minute call. Let us know when the schedule works for you. Usually that's after they have the equipment in hand, so they've had a chance to look at it and come up with any questions that they might have on the hardware. That way we can get that out of the way quickly. And then if there's been follow-on activity, definitely we provide our contact information. I've certainly had a number of text exchanges and email exchanges and phone calls for troubleshooting that's augmenting after that virtual coaching session. So we continue to provide support as needed.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Peter, are you still available?
I sure am.
All right, just before we kind of wrap things up, did you have any final comments or anything else that you would like to add?
I guess the bottom line is that this has been a great partnership with EPA, supporting a gap that they recognized in monitoring information and developing a novel tool for where you cannot have a monitor everywhere. And this is just invaluable. And a lot of our air resource advisors have really benefited from the efforts there. So it's, I think, a real teamwork effort between the two agencies and between the entities. And it's all about providing the best information to the public on wildfire smoke and how they can protect themselves.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And that concludes. Is there any other questions? I'm not seeing any things in the question area. So I would like to thank you both, Dr. Amara Holder and Pete Lom, for the presentations. Just an amazing job. I do want to let the attendees know that this is recorded and we will have this shared on our NEHA platform to those who wish to access the information. I believe EPA will also be able to share this as well. As we close, we do want to promote and let you know that we have NEHA's annual education conference, that our registration is open. We will be in New Orleans this year from July 31st to August 4th. This year's theme is raising the voice of environmental health workforce. So please consider registering and joining us in New Orleans. But thank you all so very much for taking time out your schedules. We hope you learned a lot. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so very much.